Yeah, this is it's a new thing. I decided.
Yours is as gray as mine.
Oh, dude, it's so great. Look at this. This is ridiculous.
What's up, Lovey?
But yeah, I know, right? I am
Jesus.
definitely rocking like a Lovey Claus look right now, but people seem to like it. Like it's
a good look on you.
It's actually tested well on TV and like everything else. So I'm gonna keep it for a while. I've never, ever grown a beard. This is my first time ever growing like a full beard. Like I've done.
Seriously?
Yeah, first time ever.
That's crazy.
It turned out
they test that kind of stuff for TV.
Yeah, like they look at the feedback, like, people saying you look ridiculous and like I had grown out my hair too for a while because we weren't even doing television. So I was like, screw it. I'm gonna just grow it out. It's not there. So there's no point in trying to grow it out.
Right.
So, but the beard, it was a pleasant surprise. I was not expecting it to work.
No, it looks good. I like it. It looks sharp.
Wasn't expecting it at all. So
yeah.
How you doing?
I'm good, man. Just enjoying all the extra time with the boys during this stay-home thing. So it was challenging at first. It was just something to get used to, but it's a piece of cake.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Like obviously I don't have any kids, but with kids, I can imagine this has been some adjustment has definitely been necessary.
Yeah, it's fine. We do 24 hours on, 24 hours off, Melissa and I. So I'll pick them up at 11, drop them off at 11. I pick them up the next day at 11. So we take turns every other day doing schoolwork with them, and then we have a majority of the day to do stuff we need to do because she's still teaching over Zoom calls and stuff for her grade school kids.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, is it easier because she teaches?
No, I don't think it's easier, but it's just there's less work being done. I think, except for guys like you and in certain other industries too. But I still get all my work done. It's just not condensed in like a regular 8-hour day now. So I might be on my laptop from like say 7 to 9 in the morning, and then do schoolwork with the boys from like 9 to noon or 9 to 11. And then, I'll drop them off by Melissa or she'll pick them up. And then I'll be doing things on my computer, making calls until 8:00 at night. So, but I take breaks. I'm not working straight through. It's just trying to find out what works best for you working at home. I do outside sales and I'm at home. So it's a learning curve, and there's definitely an adjustment to it, but you just have to find out what works for you and how long of blocks you can work for and still stay efficient. So maybe it's a 2 or 3 hour block and you go for a walk, or you eat some lunch, or you read a book that's not work related, and then you get back to work for a little while. You have your meetings, you schedule stuff. So it's all good. I actually don't mind it. I can work from home. I've learned that I can actually do that. And then again, I'm getting all this extra time with the boys, which I would never complain about.
I thought for sure that I would struggle with this. Because you know how I am. Like, there's an issue, there's an element of control, like like all this stuff of not being able to see your producers because they sent us home. I wasn't even honestly, I wasn't even expecting to be at home, and we were planning. I remember Mitch called me the morning of and said, "Do your show from home," and I was like, "What?" Because now, with all of the stations basically on the same floor, they were trying to cut down on the amount of people who were in the building. And they just said, well, you should just stay home if you can. So the first day I did it, we have this thing called the Lucy app.
I used it when I was on with Joe. Oh, yeah.
So it's great. It works really well if your internet is strong. And there are pockets here on the South Side where the internet is not as strong. So that first day was bad, but then they figured since there isn't any basketball or baseball games, they just sent me a Comrex. And then I hardwired it into my modem, and now the show sounds pretty good. Not studio quality, but about as good as it can be considering the circumstances. But I thought that I would hate it. Like, I remember the days of Terry being at home, and I was like, I don't think I could pull that off. And I've actually learned to enjoy it. I honestly am now starting to, Maddie, I flipped so much on this. I'm now starting to wonder, do we really need to have downtown offices?
Well, when you talk about the industry and cutting costs, and generally that's cutting people, if you can save money with regards to that kind of luxury space, I think a lot of places are looking like that. I mean, I can't imagine my company not evaluating that, or a lot of big companies. Like a sales guy doesn't. I don't need a cubicle in an office building in Elk Grove Village. I
Right.
can do the exact same stuff here. And with sales, and with you guys, it's ratings. If your ratings are there from your home office or downtown, what's the difference does it make? If I'm making my quota from my kitchen table or being in an office, what difference does it make as long as you're doing your job? And that kind of revenue that's being saved, you could use that elsewhere. You could use it towards staff, or you could use it towards implementing, a new department or whatever it might be. But I think a lot of companies will evaluate that. I'd be surprised if I ever have a desk again.
Yeah, I just kept thinking about like the bunker, like the
Oh
old
yeah,
Belmont bunker. And
jeez, man.
and I kept thinking, because that was I hope I'm not speaking out of school here. I know I probably am. That was going to be the score's like fallback position, that everyone from the score would just go to the bunker
Okay,
because the transmitter's still there and it's still operational. It's like our doomsday bunker, like
right.
legitimately a bunker. I was down for that. I was like, okay, let's go back to the small cramped studio. Let's go back to the space where it's just the score, and let's do our shows. Like I was totally ready for that to be what we ended up doing.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to hear that you guys were working from home. I thought, I just assumed, because when we were there, or when I was with you guys, it was just you went to the studio, you did your job. It didn't matter what was going on. There could have been a fire going on, and we don't know if it's a test fire alarm or a real fire. You don't leave the studio. You stay. So I was surprised. And the first two people I thought of working from home, you and Bernstein. I was like, there's no way these two dudes are gonna manage this. Like it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. Because I was like, number one, Lawrence is gonna freak out. Number two, Bernstein's family is gonna strangle him to death, like with their bare hands by week number two.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, because at first I was sitting there like, I don't know if I can do all this, and then we got through a couple shows and like, yeah, it's the same thing. Like I know that I'm driving Herbie crazy, because I'm like, we need to put this in and this sound in, and I there's a 20-second sound bite from Mully and Haw, like we need to throw that in. So I know that I'm driving him insane, but overall it's been good. It's been way better than I expected. And I think that since I've been doing so much like podcasting and stuff at home, that I had gotten the rhythm of getting everything that I needed and feeling comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
What's weird is that I podcast from here. So like, this is my office, like one of the spare bedrooms. I do the show from the basement because that's where the modem is. Right. So you want to have it as speedy as possible. So I've essentially turned 2 rooms and now I'm doing Zooms on NBC in the living room. So there are now 3 offices in my house, which I don't like. I don't like that. I that's something that I think needs to change, but I'm getting used to it. And I actually asked Terry a little bit about it, and I get it now. Like I get radio itself. Like my friends who work for Sirius, they're at home.
Right.
Doing shows from home. And it might be the wave of the future, because I don't know when we're going to be allowed to go back down there downtown.
Look at you with that Holmes estate, huh? You got one of the spare bedrooms. I'm doing podcasts. I got my home studio in the basement. I do TV in the living room.
There's only 2 of us here, and there's we got a 3-bedroom house. So I mean, it ends up working out. I wouldn't call it an estate. It's a postage stamp, but it's a nice little house.
I know.
And I will tell you this. I have been so happy that I had this place, because they're actually like the basement has 2 sides to it. And on the other side, like I have a treadmill. So we basically have like a yoga like workout space. So when I lost the gym, I actually was like, oh, I have stuff. I can stop throwing clothes onto the treadmill now, take the clothes off of the treadmill and actually plug it in and start doing some work on it.
Nice. So it's been going good for you though. You've been adjusting well with it and feeling good.
Yeah, I've been better than I'm trying to use my time like effectively too. I've learned how to edit video and stuff like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like there new projects. So I just figured I got time. I got all the time in the world now, so why not do more stuff? Because that's what I end up doing.
Well, that was always scary when you got in the cockpit though. So
yeah, there's no doubt. All right, I spent enough time talking about me. Let me talk about you.
Okay.
Do you remember like what it was that made you want to get in radio?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that goes back to high school days and listening to Johnny B. I mean that was absolutely the reason why I wanted to get in radio. I listened to the Brandmeier show religiously. I would sit in my car in the high school parking lot, or I parked down the street from high school, and I would sit in my car and I would go into class late for first period because Johnny had a bit he was doing, whether he was doing Scambo or whatever it was. He had listeners doing stupid things in drive-through, ordering stuff, screaming at a Burger King drive-through, whatever it might have been. I wanted to listen. I wanted to hear Johnny's Aunt Marcia on that was coming up, so I would sit there late. So it was Brandmeier that not only entertained me, but got me into the mindset that would be a fun thing to do and get paid to do it. So it was definitely listening to Brandmeier for sure.
So once you kind of made the connection of, hey, this guy is having fun, he's making at the time. I mean, Johnny B must have been.
Oh, he had to be rolling. Had to be rolling.
God.
I mean, he was doing concerts. Remember, he ended up getting a TV show in L.A. I mean, he had Johnny in the leisure suits. That dude had to be swimming in dough.
I keep thinking about how much the industry has changed from that regard. Like even when we were producing together, North was making what, $1.5 million?
I think I mean I don't want to speak for him on his contract, but I think he was at 1.75. That final one, maybe. I could be wrong. Maybe it was $1.5 million, but he was definitely over $1 million for sure.
And there were a bunch of guys in the industry back then that were making that type of money.
Oh yeah.
Now I think there's one left. I think it's Eric. I think he's the last person.
I think he's the last 7-figure guy. Yeah.
It's just changed so much. It's
cool. And it's funny too, Lawrence. So when I about a year and a half ago or so, I started working part-time at a little restaurant here in Libertyville. And it's a Greek place called Chrysoulas, and it's right down to Milwaukee Avenue, right in downtown. Great location. Two brothers that grew up in Libertyville, went to culinary school, worked at different places. This location opened up. Family dream to have a restaurant. So it's like a chef-driven, family-inspired recipes Greek restaurant. It's great. So I work there 1 or 2 nights a week, as a bartender or server, whatever they need. I've been doing that for over 20 years. I love the restaurant industry. So I'm working one night at Chrysoulas, and this guy, a woman, and a young child come in, and I look at the guy, and I'm like, holy crap, that looks like Brandmeier. But I'm like, I don't know if that's. I'm like, why would Brandmeier be here? I mean, that's not Brandmeier. So I go over, I check the reservation, and it was his wife's maiden name was the reservation. So I'm like, all right, it's not Brandmeier. But I'm like, he looks just like him. It's so weird. And then the server that was waiting on him, and I mentioned it to him. I'm like, that guy looks like Brandmeier because he saw me staring at him. And he's like, well, his wife did call him John. And I'm like, all right. But he looked really, really skinny, like super skinny. So I'm like, forget it. So I walk over to him, and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner. Ma'am, I apologize. I'm like, Johnny, a huge fan of yours. Just want to say it's a real honor to have you in here. And just wanted to say hi. That's all. I don't want to bother you. And he goes, oh, wait, no, it's okay. And she was like, no, it's fine. And he goes, yeah, so what's your name? And I said, I'm Matt Abbatacola. And he was like, Matt Abbatacola from The Score? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I was a big fan of yours. Come on, have a seat. Sit down.
Get out of here.
Dude, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It absolutely made my almost 17 years in radio. Having Brandmeier recognize my name, whether he was BS me or not, took the time to be kind enough to sit down and talk about radio with me for about 20 minutes.
What did he tell you? What can you share from that conversation?
Oh, it wasn't about like the ins and outs of it or any insights to it. It just, we talked about it. And dude, he listened. I mean, like all of us who, and you still in it and do it, we all listen to radio.
For sure.
Like, I would tease a lot that I never wanted to listen to it after I was done. And there were most days where I would leave the station and I needed just like, I would literally put headphones on in the train and listen to a box fan, like white noise. Cause I literally did not want to hear any, seriously, dude, I would on the train, on the metro home, I would listen to a box fan noise because I did not want to hear any talking or just anything I wanted to zone out and get it all out so I could enjoy my evening. But we all listen to radio all the time. We listen to the station. We listen to our competitors. We listen to other FM stations, and we had DJs that we liked there and became, friends with because of the industry. But he was a fan of it.
Wow.
We talked about it. We talked about listening to the score. I talked about the Loop and Kevin Matthews and Stephen Gary. I mean, that was the lineup that Johnny was part of. So we just talked about radio, and not about being in it or doing it, but just about what we loved about it. It was so cool, dude. It absolutely made my time at the Score worth every second of it. Just having the guy that I got inspired by to get into radio tell me that he knew me and was a fan of mine. It was insane.
The way you feel about Brandmeier is the way I feel about Dahl.
Oh yeah.
And when I found out that Steve listened to the station and thought I was smart and wanted me on his podcast, I was like, nah, what? That's not possible that my idol wants me to come be and hang out and talk about sports with him. It's so cool. Like those days of the old AM Loop with Johnny B, Kevin Matthews, Stephen Gary back in the day, it set a template, I think, for a lot of us that were like that. I wouldn't say the next generation. I would say the generation after that. Those of us that were impressionable at 13, 14, 15 years old, listening to that and then saying, oh, well, those guys are allowed to have fun on the radio. We could probably have fun on the radio too.
Yeah, and I think it opened up because that string between Johnny and Kevin and Stephen Gary, it wasn't always just about, you could have fun and do it, but you certainly could. But it was just, you could be yourself on the radio and garner an audience that would make you successful. And just be you, because we realized whether it's country music or sports talk or news radio, which is a little more strict and guided, obviously, it's about personality. And it doesn't really matter what genre of music you play. It doesn't really matter what format of talk you're in. If people don't connect with you in some way, it doesn't matter what you say. Your content's not going to matter if there isn't a connection there. And what we've also learned, too, about this, and this goes through a lot of different on-air personalities, whether that connection is adoration and love or if it's hatred, you need that. You need people that hate you, because the people that hate you listen every second of every day. And the people that love you, they're going to be there all the time. It's when someone's kind of vanilla about you, they come and go. But you need to garner that strong emotional reaction. I look at Stern. A lot of people listen to Stern because they hated him. Yep. They hated Stern, but a lot of people loved him. A lot of people listened to Dan and Terry because they hated Bernstein. They hated him, yet they were there every day the second the show was on the air. They would tune into it. So you needed to have that. I certainly wanted to be more loved than hated. I tried to go that direction with it, but I think sometimes that just happens naturally as a show and a personality develops. But it just showed that you could be yourself. You could talk about regular life stuff. You didn't have to be an expert. You didn't have to be, uber knowledgeable on all these different things. Just be yourself. Be a person and connect with people, and that could really take you off.
One of the things that I've always liked about the Boris and Bernstein show is, while Dan obviously is very smart and the show was smart, what I loved about it is that it to me, it's a demarcation line in sports radio in Chicago, where a lot of our shows, and I'm going to say mine too, a lot of our shows before Boris and Bernstein were kind of hot takey And if they weren't hot takey, they were super cerebral, where it's you're talking about statistics all day. I felt like the show that you guys put together allowed for there to be more space, to be more real conversations that went on, and for there to be some fun. Did that just happen, or is that something that you were driving it towards?
Oh, I drove towards that as it took time. You know, I had to settle in and understand my role, and kind of the first 18 months, 2 years was just being a part of it, doing what they wanted to do, putting more guests on than maybe I would have wanted to as executive producer. But then I realized what we could become. And yeah, we were, in my mind, we were a talk show on a sports talk radio station. And when sports needed to happen, you were going to find two better guys to talk about it, cover it, break it down if you needed to, because they had past experience. They could watch the games and they could talk about it in a fashion that was entertaining and listenable. Okay. But I knew that we were a lot more than that. And I wanted to allow more freedom for that to develop and grow between two guys that were on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as people were concerned, but shared a lot of the same values. And I knew that it wouldn't sound redundant because you had two very different people with the same thoughts, and they would come out differently, and they certainly did. Terry and Dan agreed on most everything throughout the 14 years I was there and the 19 they were on the show together. But it never felt like it was two guys repeating the same things over and over. So, you know, as the show went on, we gradually did less guests, and that was deliberate. You know, there would be times where, oh, you need to put more guests on this, you know, let's push this. Ratings took a little bit of a dip. We need more guests. Well, that's not always the case. It's not necessarily the best idea. So I would take that advice or that nudge, and I would give it its due respect, and then move on and do my show, because it was better to have Dan and Terry be Dan and Terry. And again, when especially when significant sports things happened, I don't think we had two better guys that could cover something from a breaking news standpoint. We could really do it really well. Because I think, you know, their experiences in reporting for Dan, and then, you know, Terry for the years and years he wrote in the papers, that's what they did, and they could do that well. But I wanted it to be more about Dan and Terry, and when I saw more freedom to get away from sports, I certainly wanted that to happen, because, man, I think you could listen to that show for hours and just be thoroughly entertained.
What was it like to have that vision of the show succeed, and to be able to live in that success of, we don't need to follow the same model that is kind of out there for sports radio, and it still be something that people listen to?
It felt great. And it's, you know, I think a lot of what happened was, eventually as time went on, there was a lot of, I think from my perspective, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, certainly. My perspective, there was some ego that developed and grew, which probably, you know, didn't need to. They got a little out of check. It was like, this is what I saw, this is what it became, this is where we're at. As a show, without deliberately trying to do it, I mean, we would make fun of other sports talk shows, you know, because it didn't sound genuine or real. I think some of the characters that developed in the course of the show, that hatred for Dan, and Dan being the smart guy that's going to tell you you're wrong regardless, that became part of the show, and I don't think was genuinely who Dan is as a person. The tension between Dan and I also developed as part of the show, but wasn't fully accurate of what our relationship was like, or what my actual thoughts of where Dan is what my thoughts are of Dan, as you know, for real.
Yeah, because I mean, Maddie, there were some days where I thought for sure, like, it just, as listening to it, that you were going to run into the studio and choke the shit out of Dan.
No, and the show developed into that, and it was part of the show, and I easily fell into that track of it. But we would have on-air confrontations that you would think, holy crap, this is when it's going to go down. We'd go off the air for a commercial break, and it'd be like, hey, Dan, we're going to get Starbucks. You want coffee, or anybody hungry, or we're going to get something? Or I'd walk in and drop off an article and be like, hey, that was a great segment. That was hysterical, you know, and that's what it was like. So it became part of the show, which, you know, looking back now, I regret that it did, only because it developed perspectives of individuals and aspects of the show that weren't fully accurate.
And I'm sure that you probably get asked all the time, what's Dan like?
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's I still get it. I still get it today. I mean, I've been gone, 3 years last Sunday, and
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
and I had a guy yesterday in my parking lot. I was leaving, and I was talking to another guy that I know, and he happened to say my name, and the guy was like, "Oh, from the score." He was like, "Is that Dan Bernstein?" Like the asshole he really seems that he was. Like that happened yesterday, so I still get it. Yeah, and I know I perpetuated that kind of perspective about Dan, and I feel bad about that. And I've talked to Dan, since I've left the station about that, and I felt compelled at certain points to apologize to him for things because I treated him poorly, and I treated him less respectful than he deserved as a person at times. But the show kind of did that, and also my ego and my bad attitude played a part of that as well.
What do you think led to you having a bad attitude? Was it just burnout? Was it a lack of opportunity? What was it that you think led to that?
It was a little bit of it was burnout, and then there was several factors. So let's start with burnout and doing that thing for a long time. And then, Mitch obviously saw that and put me in a role of doing updates. My bad attitude then turned that into a negative thing because it was like, I'm not being used enough. I mean, anybody can do an update. I'm sorry. And that's no offense to guys that do them really, really well. I thought I did them well enough to get the job done. There's some guys that excel at it. But I didn't feel like I was being used enough. But it was a break from everyday grind of producing a 5-hour show. I felt like I didn't have other opportunities that I thought maybe I deserved. And again, there's maybe some of that's real, and maybe some of that's my ego and attitude. I also, Lawrence, I mean, my personal life played an impact on that too. I've ruined more relationships of all kind than I've developed great ones in my life. Looking back on it, would I have, I think looking back now, where I am at now as a person, I don't think I would have walked away from the score. I think I would have gone to Mitch and, an HR and seen because that was in May, and to see if maybe there was something we could do to give me a few months off to kind of take care of myself and things I needed to as a person, and maybe come back for the summertime or for football season. I think if, looking back on that now, I kind of wish I'd done that, taken that route with it. I'm not at all unhappy where I am in life, professionally and as a person. As a person, I haven't been and felt this healthy or this good about myself, and I've worked on a lot of things over the last several years. But yeah, my personal life definitely played a part of it, and ego, thinking I deserved more, and then you throw burnout in there too. So,
How bad did things get for you personally?
man, they were pretty bad. They were pretty bad. I have a real gift of self-sabotage in life. I learned through counseling that I never valued relationships of any kind. And I don't mean this like with the opposite sex. I mean, friendships, being a brother, being an uncle, being a son, being an employee, being a coworker. Relationships were never important to me. Relationships were a necessity to get through life, and they weren't something to be valued. And I learned a lot of that about myself, and so that was valuable to learn. I was drinking too much, I never got to a point where I needed assistance in ending that, because I stopped drinking, and I stopped drinking for a while. And I certainly drink a lot less now than I did. But I would drink on the train going to the station. I would sneak beers into the station. I would drink beers going home on the train. I was just drinking too much just to not have to, and I wouldn't get like hammered where I wasn't able to function. I certainly did my job and lived my life, but I just didn't want to think about things. So it was an easy escape for me. And that's another trait I learned about my family as well.
that the Abbatacolas like to drink?
No, the Abbatacolas like to avoid things, and it's a lot easier.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's something that's that's specific to you guys. I think a lot of us try to do that. You know, I
No,
think
it's not specific, but it certainly is a trait that runs through a lot of the men for generations in my family. I've learned.
wow.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Like
Yeah.
that makes sense. So when did you feel like, because making a decision to go to counseling, like that's a hard thing to do. Like that's a hard thing to come to grips with. When did you get there, and what was the impetus for you to go there?
Well, I'd gone to counseling at one point, and I was doing it not for myself, so that really wasn't going to be as effective as it could be. After I left the station and realized that I pretty much didn't want to get any lower in life where I was, that it was like, you don't even want to look in the mirror and see who you see, and when you do, you're like, not only do I not like that guy, but like, who the hell is that guy? Like, that's not me, this isn't who I am as a person inside. So let's figure out, because I certainly couldn't figure out on my own why, I'd gotten to certain aspects of life that I'd gotten to. So who can help with that? And so it was at that point. And then it's an actual conscious effort to be open and honest and sincere and try to figure out and let that person guide you that as they see best to try to help unpack what had been going on in your life. And at that point you're talking, 44, almost 45 years. So
Is it hard to allow, like, cause you've been in leadership positions in work, like you're an EP, you're someone that people look to. You were the most tenured producer at the Score at the time that you left. Was it hard for you to allow someone to tell you what to do?
No, not at all. I mean, not at that point. It certainly would have been, but I was completely broken. And when you get to that point and you realize it and accept that A, I'm broken, and B, being broken is not a bad thing because you can get fixed. Then you're all ears and all game to participate in whatever gets you healthy, for sure.
I always no, go ahead.
Well, go ahead. No, you ask your question.
No, because you were going down a better train of thought. I was gonna.
Right. No, I was just gonna bring it back too because I'm cool with being open and talking about stuff. And when I was doing afternoons and when they hired Danny Parkins to come in, that for me, mentally, my ego was just like, fuck it, that's it. I'm not staying at this place. And nothing to do with him because, he's a good dude. I don't really know him all that well. We've texted occasionally. And I saw him up at, when I saw you guys up at the Brat Stop.
Yeah.
Saw Danny, talked to him for a few secs. I've heard a lot of great things about him. I just don't know him all that well to develop my own thought or opinion on him. But when someone a lot younger was brought in from the outside, even though he's a Chicago guy, but was doing it at KC, I was like, that's it. I'm not this, nothing's ever going to happen here for me. Fuck it, I'm done. And my ego just grabbed a hold of it and said, you know what? You take care of you. And it was the wrong approach to it, but yeah.
Well, that was one of the things I was going to ask you. I've always wondered if there was ever a point where you thought about working at US 99.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Dude, okay, so I got into radio because of Brandmeier.
Right.
I wanted to be in radio because I wanted to be on an FM morning show. And I wanted to be music and I wanted to be country. And that's absolutely what I wanted to do. 100%. I mean, dude, I would, when they got rid of Lisa and Ramblin' Ray or Ramblin' Red Rectum, I was like, God, that would be a dream. It'd be an absolute dream. And then, they brought Styles and Roman over from B96 for US 99. I would have loved to do it. I did a little bit, was it a month and a half, maybe 6 weeks, on 105.9 when it was like an adult contemporary. I can't remember what it was called though, but I filled it in the morning show. I think it was Steve McEwen was doing mornings. And I ran into Rod one morning and he was like, well, hey, what are you doing out here? And I'm like, I'm doing the morning show. He's like, why? You're a sports guy. And I'm like, well, I'm actually a radio guy. I just happen to work at the Score right now. Like, I'd love to do FM music. Oh, no, you could never do it. You're a sports guy. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I certainly, dude, I would have loved to have been on a country station, like a morning show country station. Absolutely. 100%.
There's nothing worse than you can only do this thing. Oh,
right. Come on, dude. Seriously?
I
Like
hate that.
I couldn't connect with a country music, adult audience. Come on, seriously? That's all I've been listening to since like 1991. And it was, it's funny because, and I'll tell you this, I know that because you teach and you work with a lot of students. If you want to get in radio, like, if you know what you want to do, go do it. You know what I mean? And maybe it's not the Chicago market. I got real lucky. My first gig and my only gig was in Market 3. I was super fortunate. Very an anomaly to things, you know what I mean? Normally, with 1,000 people that want to do it, and to be able to get your dream gig right away. And mine was the dream city, actually, but not the gig. If you know what you want to do, go do it, no matter where it is. And if you're set on doing, country music, go work at a country station somewhere. And obviously there might be life restrictions. For me, I couldn't leave the Chicago area. I was limited. But if you have the flexibility, go do what you want to do, regardless of where it is. Just go do it and start working on that craft right there, and then work your way back to where you want to be, whatever your dream job might be. I interned at the Score for 6 months. They hired me like a week later. I became a full-time employee within like 2 weeks. And before I knew it, I was like EPing Dan and Terry's show. Like 3 years had gone by, and it all, and like, part of me was like, I had so many great experiences and made so many great relationships and know so many great people at this point because of my time at the Score. But what if I would have said no to $20,500 a year, running the board for Murph and Fred? What if I would have said, maybe I'm going to go, a little south in Illinois and try to find a country station, or maybe try to go a little north up into southern Wisconsin to find a country station? What would have been different about my career?
I try to explain to the students, like, if you content creation is what you want to go into, because now you can't just say radio, like it's content creation, because you're
right.
You're going to be working on the website, and they're going to have you doing stuff, and you're going to be doing video and all this nonsense. I try to explain to them how broke they're going to be. And think about it. In 2003, not that long ago, you and I, as a production pair, are making less than $50,000 combined.
Right, and that's where a morning show in the number 3 market
with good ratings, like the Murph and Fred did well. So
yeah, absolutely.
So a show that was doing well, the two producers are making a combined less than $50,000. I think if you add it up, I think we were making $46,000 a year. Yeah.
So I started off when Fishman offered me the job. It was $20,500, and when he hired me, and I said, yeah, I definitely wanted it. He was like, all right, the starting salary is 25. And I was like, wow, 25,000. That's a lot less than I'm expecting. I make more money waiting tables right now.
He's like, no.
So yeah, dude, that's exactly what it was. I'm like, well, 25,000 is pretty low. He's like, oh no, not 25,000, 20,500. And dude, I lost my marbles. I'm like, dude, you can't say 25 if you mean 20,500. I go, you just took $4,500 away from me in the last 3 seconds. Like, that's not right. And he's, and then the blank sheet of white paper went up, and he was like, what? I'm like, come on, Fish, you're killing me, bro. Killing me. So yeah, 20,000. Wait, so you were making 25 grand?
I think
what the heck?
I think I made 20.
I'm kidding.
I actually think I got that wrong. I actually think it's 23.5. So I think we were making less than $45,000 a year between us. I think it was 23.5 because I was working in sales, and I was literally going to leave the station.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that's when Drew was like, well, why don't you come be the executive producer of the Murph and Fred show? And I was like, no.
That's right.
No, that's not going to end well.
We were making 44 combined.
Yep. That's what we were making.
Jesus.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And you know what's weird, Maddie? I can't remember how I lived off of that. Because I had an apartment at the time. I had an apartment in Hyde Park, and I want to say the apartment was like $650 a month. It's a nice apartment. I love that place. But how did I eat? How do you live off of that? I mean, you figure out a way, but my goodness. And what's scary is a lot of the full-time salary jobs, it's not like there's been a huge jump in what a person, even with at the time, like I had great experience. Like I had a ton of experience. So you're only going to pay me 23.5 or whatever it was. Like
Right.
that's still going on in the business as we speak.
Oh yeah, no, the people behind the scenes don't get paid enough, and I don't think that's ever going to change in the industry. Dude, I was working Murph and Fred with you, and I was waiting tables at lunch at one restaurant, and I was waiting tables at dinner at another restaurant. That's how I survived. And I would get home sometimes at 11 o'clock at night, midnight, and I was back at the station by 3 at the latest. Oh, it was brutal. It was like an 18-month run doing that. It was absolutely brutal. But I needed to make more money.
What do you think you learned from Mike Murphy?
I learned a couple things. Preparation, number one, that you had to be prepared every day, and you couldn't just walk in and wing it. To a point where, I mean, he was over prepared, where he programmed like every second of a show, which is a far extreme. And then there's some shows that there's no preparation. I think there's a healthy balance in the middle there. Mm-hmm. So I learned that about Murph. I learned that be prepared every day to do your best with it, because he always brought it. Be creative. Learn that from Murph. I also learned, I don't think this was his intent, but don't be afraid to look stupid at times. If you thought this sound effect might be cool or this segment might be cool, don't be afraid to try it. And if you like it, go with it. See what happens. I also learned how not to treat people. I learned that. That was a big thing. I also learned that you didn't have to like everybody you worked with too. That it wasn't necessary to have a successful show.
I agree with that. The biggest thing that I took from Murph, one is what you said about understanding that you can treat people great, like, and they'll work for you, and probably they'll work harder for you,
right?
If you treat people nice. But I did appreciate his wanting to use sound, because I think that our medium, it's one of the things that I think that we've gone away from, that we don't need to. We work in sound, so why not use sound more often? My issue with him was his sound was antiquated. And whenever we tried to offer him more modern alternatives, he would flip out. And it's like, why are you flipping out? We
right.
get what you're trying to do. We're trying to help you make that better.
Like the golf segment, the golf tips or whatever it was, and the sound of the swinging golf club. Okay, I mean, we could have done something to improve it and to actually make it more valuable to the segment, but he didn't want to hear it, So, and I knew you were going to say that, because I know that impacted you back then, and I've seen it, I've heard it carry through your radio career as well. Certainly not antiquated sound effects, but how valuable sound is for your radio show, and that clearly comes through on a regular basis with you.
Well, the good thing is I feel very lucky, like, when obviously, like, working with Joe was great, but working with Roki and working with Tony Gill, people who are way younger than I am, and them having input and saying, no, why don't you do this? Why don't you play this? Why don't you use this music drop? Why don't you use like something that's more relevant? That's a challenge. Like, as you get older, it's a challenge. And I keep thinking back to us being in that booth in NBC Tower and us saying, no, don't do that. Don't play 4 minutes of it. Play 2 minutes of it.
Right.
Don't take the Ernie Banks and whiteboard it for people occasionally. Let them know what they're listening to, so they understand all this stuff. And I'm trying to make sure that I don't morph into that, where it's only going to be my way, and I'm the only one that has the input of sound on a show.
Yeah, a week or so ago when I was on with Joe and Tanny, and we were talking about B&B, And I'll always, this is one of the very first thoughts I have of both those guys is when you sit down in the studio day one to produce their show, regardless of your background, your experience, who you are, you were part of their show. Open the mic. You got something to say? Say it. You're part of the show.
That's right.
You have a thought, you have a story, bring it up, share it, talk about it. They had an ability like I've never seen before to involve everyone in their success. And that's why it made the show great, because everyone had a voice. In my time there, Scott Scheer had a voice, even though it wasn't his voice, it was sound. That's how Scott spoke on the show. I could open the mic anytime I wanted to. They never, in 14 years, never once said, hey, you talked too much today, or why'd you do that? Never one time. Jason developed his show during that show. I mean, sometimes Jay would do a solo show during the B&B show, or we would do a show together during B&B when we didn't want to hear them. Tannehill developed his voice, not only with his voice, which was limited, but the most effective use of words, because he was the funniest guy, I think, that ever was part of that show. He could say 7 words during one show, but his impact would be greater than all of ours for that day. And he also used sound and his ability to edit audio like no one else in the city could do. And I would bet in radio against the country without even hearing everything. So everyone developed their own voice and their own personality on the show. And Dan and Terry allowed it, which was great, which was the only reason it worked.
You notoriously hated running the board. Why?
I did. Because you had to pay attention to the whole thing, and I didn't want to do. Yeah, I just didn't want to. Dude, and plus, okay, keep in mind too, my experiences, my start was doing Murph and cart machines and bringing in anywhere from 175 to 225 carts, depending on the day, and some segments needing 5 or 6 carts with like 3 functioning cart machines.
Hold on, let me whiteboard this for people who are listening to this.
Yes, please.
A cart looks like an 8-track. Like, imagine an 8-track tape, like back in the day. Murph had a carousel that Maddie and I were responsible for carrying in. And these were all the things, this is what we're talking about with sound. So with all the things that he'd want to have on a particular, and it honestly, like, it could have been, it was so random. So this thing of carts, this carousel of carts, used to sit with us or with him, depending on what he wanted to play that day. And you have to catalog all of that stuff. And then you can only play them one at a time. So imagine Maddie only having available to him 3 different cart machines. And I guarantee you one of them was always broken. And then try to put together a show where the host is like, let's do this, and is calling stuff out. It was cumbersome. It was annoying. And I just wanted to let people understand like what we're talking so they can visualize what a car, like for those that are going to watch some of this, like this is what I use to back up every piece of sound that I have on the podcast, right? This isn't even half the size of a cart. This is about half the size of a cart.
Google 8-track tape. And now an 8-track tape would hold, like the regular ones you'd buy back in the day, and I'm talking, 70s and into the 80s, would hold a whole album. Murph's carts were the same size and would hold one sound only, because that's what they were made for. So we did golf, like the golf tips. Golf tip had its own theme music that played in the background the entire time. That was one cart. So this is pre-digital. Then there would be the golf club swing. That was on its own separate cart. So I'd have to play that. When you played it, you have to make sure you rewind it. Because if you didn't rewind it, it was still at the end of the cart and it wouldn't play again. So if you went to shoot it and play it again and it wasn't rewound, nothing played. So not only do you have to make sure you're playing the right things, you're making sure that they're rewound if you use them multiple times in one segment. Then there'd be other sound effects you'd have to play. And then if you had like 6 different carts and only 3 working cart machines, you'd have to pull one out, make sure it was rewound first, take it out, set it where you could grab it again, put the next one in, rewind that, put the other one back in. Oh yeah, it was so, dude. So you wonder why I hated running the board? That's what I grew up on. That's what I learned on.
I mean, it honestly does make sense that there's almost like a radio PTSD that goes on. And anyone who produced Murph, like we're all in a club of that. Like we all have it.
No, there's a support group for it. We meet every Thursday night. Dude, and I've told this on the air before, and I've actually said that if I could go back and do things differently with Murph, I certainly would. As far as my behavior is concerned, I can't change how someone else acts, and he was a difficult guy to work with, but I made things harder on him, and I think I'm a regular human. I think most people would have as well. But dude, I would go through at the end of a day, and I would cut one of his cart machines so that one of the cart players, the tapes, so that it wouldn't work the next show. Oh yeah, completely wrong. I mean, I should have been fired for that kind of behavior, but it's like that's what he brought out of people. And looking back on that, I hate that that's how it was. I really do. I really do. When we talked about Terry's last show last week when I was with Joe and Tanny, I legitimately wanted Murph to come on the show. And I know he wouldn't respond to me. I know Mitch tried. And I honestly can't remember, dude. It was not that long ago, but still. I don't know if he told Mitch no, or if Mitch never got a hold of him or never responded to Mitch. But I legitimately wanted him on the show. I wanted to see him personally, to apologize in person to him. And I think it would have been a really good moment for he and Terry to kind of work some things out. And I think they would have at that point. I really do.
What's special about Terry Boers?
Terry has a trait that everyone wants and not many of us have, and that is to be genuine and real 24/7. To be the guy, the person you are, regardless of the audience, regardless of the room, regardless of who you're in front of, regardless of what he's doing. Just the real, genuine, honest person. No masks, no agendas, no alternative behaviors, just real and genuine 24/7. What you saw with Terry is what you got. He treated everyone the same with kindness and respect and dignity, regardless of who you were. He did it. And I think it's a trait that everyone wants to have. And Terry has it by nature, without effort.
I've always felt that he is the freest man that I had ever heard on terrestrial radio after Howard Stern left.
Mm-hmm.
That Terry could make a noise and it was hysterical, or you could almost see him rolling his eyes at someone saying something stupid by listening to him. It's a talent and a gift that I don't know if you're just born with it, but he was out of fucks to give. And that was from the moment he cracked a microphone. To live in that space where you don't care, it's so, as a listener of that show, as a P1 listener of that show, I looked forward to it every day because I knew that no matter what happened, I was going to get the realest part of Terry Boers for those 5 hours that he was on the air.
No, 100%. And outside of that too, when a lot of people don't have any fucks to give, and it can come across as a real negative asshole type mentality. And Terry never permeated that way out of Terry. He didn't have any fucks to give, but he was still the nicest guy you could meet. And I think that's unique and special about him.
Yeah, me too. We miss him. Like I've said this on the air, and I stand by it. Like him retiring, like it was such a, like the confluence of Doug dying and Terry retiring, I felt was pretty devastating for the radio station. And I think that everyone's done their best, and I think that we've grown as a radio station. But those two guys, like their impact on Chicago radio is so large that I think we're still kind of building ourselves back up from both of those events. And with Doug, I mean, that was 5 years ago. This is 5 years ago when Doug passed away. But
yeah, I think I think you don't build yourself back up from that. I think you recover from it because you're different. And I think you can look at the score in different stages and different chapters. And there is certainly a chapter, a page that turned after Doug. And the station will never be the same again. There's a page that turned after Terry left, and it'll never be the same. It doesn't mean it can't be great and successful, because it certainly is. It's different. And it's never going to be like what it was, but it doesn't mean it still can't be great and give great content to a large audience base and be, the best sports talk radio show or station in Chicago. It's different. It's what it is.
You brought up Chris Tannehill. Can we talk
Yeah.
about Tanny for a minute?
Absolutely. One of my favorite people I've ever known.
Look, that guy, I've said it, and I think that you've sat next to, as a producer, guys who I think are really good at sound. John Momola, really good at sound.
Oh, he's
Jason
great.
Goff, underrated as being really good with sound, but really good with sound. And I say this not to throw shade on those two guys or Scott Scher or anyone else who sat in the chair. I have never had a producer as good with sound as Chris Tannehill was when he was working the nighttime show with me, and hearing him be in afternoons for as long as he's been in afternoons. I don't know if people understand how amongst radio people, we sit there and go, this fucking guy is
Right.
unbelievable with it.
No, he's absolutely, like I said, I don't need to hear any other sound guy in the country. He's the best, period. Was certainly the best in the city. And again, his ability to grow and develop his craft, which was highly developed at the point when he entered Dan and Terry's show and grew from there even further. That goes back to Dan and Terry not having dictatorship over their show, but being a part of their show and allowing Tannehill to play whatever sound he wanted, whatever music he wanted, whatever intros and opens and production pieces he put together, to the point where they would look forward to that, because that was 2 or 3 minutes that they didn't have to say anything, and there'd be great content going out over the air. So yeah, he's the absolute best. But I mean, outside of a professional standpoint, Tanny is one of the best guys I've ever known. I've been so fortunate in my time working with that show. And it's funny because I can look at it and say, Scott Scher, one of the nicest, kindest men you'll ever meet in your life.
There's no doubt. Genuinely good human being.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Jason, a guy that younger than myself, a guy that I've looked up to, because I respect the way he's carried himself as a person and how he treats people. Just a really genuinely good person. Tannehill, a really genuine, just good person. Terry, a good person. Dan, a good person. I mean, the work he does for One Step Camp, the father he is, the husband he is, all those guys, just the guys you would want your son to model after, just good people. And I was like, Jesus, man, what am I doing in this group? I don't belong here. These guys are saints compared to me. I'm an idiot. I'm an egotistical asshole. I've been so fortunate to have those guys next to me and to be around them and to experience what it looks like to be a really good person. And those guys certainly have been, absolutely 100%. I mean, that streak that I've run through, but sitting in that show under Hood, under Zampillo. I mean, again, more just genuinely good people. You know what I mean?
Another guy, sound wise, man, the ideas that Jonathan would have for shows, you can't pull that off, and then he'd pull it off.
Pull it off, dude. And my internship was right towards the end of his time running the board for that show. So I got to see the very end of his time. And, man, I would just sit and laugh. But I wouldn't, laugh openly, super out loud, because I was, an intern. I was, trying to be cool about it. But, man, I wanted to get out of that room and just die. I mean, when he would do the Hal McRae thing, I don't think I've ever heard anything funnier on the radio than Hood doing that. But, man, just being able to sit, with those – I mean, the number of good people during my time there. And that's another thing about the show, too. 19 years together, I was part of it 14. The limited number of people that worked on the show. I mean, people put time in on that show. That says a lot. It says a lot about the show itself.
How hard was it to put together Terry's last show?
From a standpoint of the organization, it was consuming. It was difficult. 32 guests in a 5-hour show, giving people the proper time and respect that they deserved was going to be impossible. So it was just do the best you can and try to make it as entertaining as possible with the limited amount of time each person's going to have. That was hard. I had a lot of great support though from Mitch and promotions. Again, just the creativity. This is Terry Boers, day one, saying goodbye. And Mitch said, it's your show. Make it happen. There was no micromanaging. There was no, let me see what you're doing here. Let me see what you're doing here. That, again, another great aspect of it. Just go create and make it happen. So I wanted to do it in a spirit that would honor Terry, something that he would walk away with and remember forever, something that our listeners would remember forever, the studio audience that was there to actually feel what was happening more than just hearing it. I never thoroughly got to enjoy it, honestly, until last week.
Because you're in it, so you're not experiencing it.
Right. There was. So I listened to the whole show last week when the station replayed it. Man, I cried. I got goosebumps. I laughed. I smiled. There was so much that I didn't hear, even though I'd heard it. I didn't really hear it. You know what I mean? I didn't want to go back and listen to it, and I don't think if the station hadn't replayed it, I'm not sure I even would have listened to it start to finish.
Why not?
It was one of my proudest days at the station, but it was also one of my saddest. It was one of the most difficult days, And I know it was a good and positive experience, but I don't think I wanted to sit through and listen to it and relive the 14 years that I spent with Terry and having that no longer exist. Again, if you don't listen to it and you avoid it, maybe it never happened.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I get it. I also get the idea of, because you're doing it at the time, like, you don't really get to appreciate it. Like, it's one of the reasons why, like, my favorite radio moment is that last Bears report that we did before the Super Bowl, because you spend all this time, Zach and I spent all this fucking time, like, being hardcore, like, NFL beat reporters, giving you guys reports every day. And then that Friday, it was like, none of this shit matters. While out.
Yeah.
Let's just have fun with the absurdity of people asking Lovie Smith if he can smell a championship, and let's go flirt with what's his name's mom, Matt Hasselbeck's mom.
Yeah, your mom's hot.
Right.
What? He get up and left the show.
But she stayed.
Yes, she did stay
out with us.
Right.
Zach and Amanda Beard, like, there was just so much stuff that was going on. And I was still drunk from, like, watching Prince a couple hours ago, like, not actually drunk, but, like, mentally drunk from watching Prince perform 50 feet from where we were doing it. Like, those are the things where you think that some things are so important, but I felt like the listener didn't get cheated. Like, the listener who was listening to all of us just while out enjoyed the hell out of that, even though we were acting like crazy people on the radio.
Dude, I will never forget that report. I can picture us sitting there. I can picture the moments happening, the body language, the laughter, people watching and staring, and other radio stations being distracted from their shows because they were like, what the hell is going on? People stopping and watching. And I love how you said that. I think that really sums up how I feel about the B&B show. There, my 14 years with them, certainly there were days I walked away disappointed thinking we did a bad show and we could have done better. But man, for the majority of it, we never cheated the audience. And I love the way you put that. I thought it's great. Man, if you can go each day and not cheat your audience, I think that's a successful day. And I think we did that for most of the time together. But man, that Bears report, that Amanda Beard stuff though, I'll never forget. Man, that was great. Holy cow, was that great?
Yeah.
And that's the thing about Zach. It's like, Zach is so good on the air, and he's so like I'm so happy he's doing the Cubs stuff, and he's so great doing play-by-play, and whether it's basketball or doing baseball, and he sounds great, but you just don't know that there is a goofy, crazy other side of Zach that you don't know on the radio, and he keeps it cool. He keeps it cool, and
he leaned in that day though.
He sure did lean in that day, which was so cool about it. But that's the Zach that we knew, and that's the Zach that you knew a lot better than I knew. But the audience never knew that Zach. They just knew the really cool, great reporter, keep it pro, keep it moving. Zach, great play-by-play. But there's a dude there that would make you laugh till you cried if you hung out with him.
There's no doubt.
And since we bring that up, let's go back in history a little bit with our Saturday show that I fucked up and completely is like part of the trail of destruction I can look back on and create my own path. When I fucked up the very first show that we had, and again it was ego and thinking I was more important than I was, and being out drinking, dude. It was just an absolutely horrible thing, and I'm I look at it and it's like. And I know dude, again, happy with my life, love my job, got 3 unbelievable kids, love being a dad, I coach, I love my life. And I look at the path that you've gone on and Zach has gone on, and there was a time where I wouldn't want to think about that show, that moment, that summer. Now I can sit here and go, holy shit, I was part of that. With Lawrence and with Zach. Look where those guys are now. Those were my boys. Those were the guys I did work with. Those were the guys I walked in the studio with. And I can look at it with pride and also pride for you guys too, and respect. And it's like, yeah, I worked with those dudes. Yeah, that dude you see on TV, killing it. Oh yeah, we did a show together. Oh yeah. And so it's different. I've transformed my perspective on it. But boy, looking back on it, what an idiot, what an asshole to ruin an opportunity.
I regret the severity of how I responded to that.
Okay.
I feel like I could have gotten my point across to you without being as angry as I was. I
won't forget sitting in the studio with you, the side studio. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget it.
I was on one. I feel like now I felt like I could have gotten through to you better if I would have calmed down and just explained why I was upset. Like, I know that you understand it, but it was one of those moments. And like if you go back to the episode where Grody and I are on, and I talk with Grody, because for the most part, I am calm and polite, and I would even say nice. But there's a point where if I get to it, I am vicious. And I felt like in discussing what had happened, I was vicious. And there were a lot of things that were at play. I was mad at Mitch because if he had just listened to me, and because his whole thing was, I guess I got to whiteboard this too. Me, Maddie, and Zach had a show on Saturday morning. And it was going to be Saturday morning, 6 to 10. And the idea was that we were going to be given an opportunity to see if we could create a show that maybe would then replace Mike North's show. Like, because North was leaving or had left, right? He was already gone by that point.
Yeah, I don't remember, dude. You can speak for us.
So they were trying to figure out if the 3 of us would be the next morning show at the Score. And in the first show, Zach and I are looking at each other, and it's like 5:45, and Maddie's not there. So we're calling him. We're trying to get him. We can't get him. And Mitch had been like, look, Maddie's going to drive the show. And, you two, because you're reporters, like, that's his job. His job is to drive. You guys are there to bring whatever it is that you're bringing in from the field. So Zach and I are sitting there going, well, we got to make a decision because you weren't there on who was going to drive it. Maddie had been out that night, and I would guess that morning, like up until that morning.
I wasn't out super late. It's just I I drank too much when I was out. I was actually home at a regular, like a normal time to get up and do the show. I didn't set an alarm because I was drunk and I overslept.
What I think that you got in at like 7:40. So Zach and I have been doing this show, and it was new. Like, no one knew anything about it. It was just, oh, Lawrence and Zach are doing a radio show. Okay. But Mitch was adamant about you driving the show. So when you came in, even though it was like in the middle of a segment, I'm like, why would we do this? Like, that, like, to me, it felt silly. I'm like, just wait until 8:00, bring Maddie in, and then the audience doesn't know. And then you got on the air and you were like, guys, like literally the first thing you said was, guys, I'm really sorry. I was supposed to be here. And I understood why you were apologizing, but I'm sitting there like, no, like, don't, no. And then afterwards, I flipped my shit. Like, I flipped my shit. And I think that it did some damage to our friendship. And I apologize for flipping my shit. I now know that there would have been a better way to approach that conversation with you. And I apologize for that. I think that the substance of what I said, I don't apologize for.
Yeah, no, I don't think you have to apologize for anything. And I think you were rightfully as angry as you were. And it's fine. Yeah, no, and dude, it had a massive impact on me, and I don't think it hurt our friendship at all. I think it added to, and not anything you did, my own behavior just added to this, this self-sabotage type mentality that I carried through most of my adult life, and without an explanation to it. I would have, if I was Mitch, I would have not put me on the show that day. And I would have had a serious conversation during the week, the four of us, about even continuing to go on it. Like, if I shouldn't have gone on that day. He should have said, "You're an asshole. Don't go on." The four of us should have talked about it later in the week, probably, and decided if I should have even been a part of the show moving forward.
Yeah, but I wish I would have handled it differently.
Yeah, I get it.
And
I get it.
More constructively.
Yeah, I get it, and it's fine.
You know how much affection that I had for you, and I, like, more than even us, like me, you, and Zach, I kept thinking, like, this is Maddie's chance to win, and I was so frustrated because I'm like, fuck, man, like this is it, like this is the thing that you've been looking for, and we're gonna do this together. Like, we're going to do this together, and you're going to win, and it's going to be awesome. And I lost my mind after.
Yeah, and rightfully so. And it was, we were on the runway, as Mitch said. We were on the runway. And I know Zach always loved that, on the runway. We were on the runway.
He uses that today.
Yeah, and I act of terrorism, I took the plane over. So, yeah, it was bad. But, yeah, you got nothing to apologize for. I apologize to you, and I apologize to Zach as well. I know he'll be dying to hear this version of the podcast. So I'm sure he'll probably tune in. He'll probably be the first guy to download it and tune in. So Zach, I apologize. And, I also apologize for that one night in Miami. Sorry.
Hey, what happened in Miami?
We made love
to each other. Don't share.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, nothing happened. Nothing happened in Miami. I'm just kidding. Zach would hang out with me. Zach he knew better than to hang out with me. So yeah, it's fine.
Do you feel like you're healed up?
100%.
That's good.
I feel great. Yeah, I feel great. So I feel 100% happy. I wake up every day, feet hit the floor. I'm good to go, man. I'm happy. I got no more regrets. I've dealt with regrets, and regrets are a vice and a chain that holds you back. You deal with shit you need to deal with, and you try to rectify everything you can, and you move forward. And then you try to be better. I mean, I just wake up, try to be better today. Wake up, try to be better tomorrow than I was today. Dude, I got this really cool this picture of the boys at our church, and they're sitting at the bottom of the staircase. Staircase is going up, and it's really cool. The slogan underneath it And someone at the group at youth group, my church, they actually had it blown up and made it into like a life size poster kind of thing for me. So this is it right here.
Oh wow!
And it's in my yeah, isn't that cool? And so it hangs right at the edge of my bed against the wall. So it's the last thing I see at night. It's the first thing I see in the morning as I look straight at it. And it says, a father said to his sons, "Be careful where you walk." And the sons responded, "You be careful. We walk in your footsteps." So that's how my day starts and ends every day. God, am I perfect? Fuck no. I mean, there are people in my life that still hate me today. And, you know, I'm not a perfect guy, but I'm never going to be perfect. But I try to be better each day I wake up, and I do it for them. And that's the first and last thing I see every day. So I am healthy. I'm happy. Yeah, I'm in a good place. Very fortunate to have the job I have. You know, and I work at ADP. I do sales for them. I'm a restaurant specialist. So majority of my territory I call on is restaurants and bars. It's a great company.
I would imagine that's rough right now.
Oh, dude, it's brutal. I mean, when about 65% of my territory is restaurants and bars. So since we've closed down in the middle of March, I basically haven't, you know, it's been a lot harder to call on people because they're either closed completely or down to the bare minimum of staff, and they're just doing takeout. And no one wants to sit and have conversations right now about business. But we're trying. We're doing our best. So,
is there any part of you that thinks that you'll find yourself working in broadcasting in some form at down the line?
Oh, again, I would love to. You know, I think going through all my life experiences and where I'm at now as a person, I think I could be a very valuable asset to help and lead. You know, I really do. You know, I have a podcast idea I want to do, and was actually hoping to get it going in March, and then everything shut down. So as soon as I get that started, we'll get that going again.
Okay, well, good. Well, I'm glad that you had time for this. This was a lot of fun.
It was fun. It was a great time.
You know, it's good to be able to talk to you, and I appreciate you being as open about things, because what's happened with you over the last like 5 years hasn't been easy, and some of it's been public, and I would imagine that that's difficult.
100%. Dude, you know, when you have your life on display, it's really hard, especially when it's, you know, it's just stuff that you don't want strangers to know or be a part of. But at the end of the day, you look at it and say, well, who do you have to look at for this happening? It's yourself, you know, and you can't blame other people for your own behavior. So you could become jaded and angry about it and hold grudges against people, or you could say, all right, that's what I did. That was who I was. It's not who I am now. What can I try to do to rectify either broken aspects of life or broken relationships? And all you can do is try, and they're either received or not received, and then you move on and be a better person the next day. That's all you can do. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with everything that's happened in life, and because it's my life, dude. And you know, I'm not going to change anything about my life, because I can look at a lot of different things and how one path leads to another. And if things didn't happen as they had to this point right now, you know, I wouldn't have Abigail, who's a 23-year-old senior at Illinois State. I wouldn't have Hank, who's in first grade, and Jack, who's in kindergarten, and are my life. So yeah, it's all good, man. It's all good.
I'm still rooting for you to win, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to try to stop fucking it up too. We'll see.
Well, you got help if you need it. And I'm glad that you were willing to give of yourself, and I think that you're learning some stuff from it, but I still root for you to win.
Hey, how old are you now?
I'm 44.
44. Okay, so you're 3 years younger than me. So it was what, 2001. I'm trying to do the math here. 28. So you'd have been 25.
Correct.
I was 28. God, man, that's crazy. We've known each other a long time. I'm 3 years from 50. That's crazy. It's insane.
I just celebrated, when we were recording this a week ago, I'm now in my 23rd year at the score.
I saw that. That's insane.
Pretty crazy.
It is crazy.
You know what's really weird? So, like, my first year of making money in broadcasting, I was working for Channel 9 as a field producer. So I found myself in the Last Dance documentary. Like
I saw your tweet about that. I know. I wish you had a. I love it, dude. That's
it's
so
hilarious.
cool.
Like, but that's how old I am. And I was talking with my students about it last week, and they're like, "Wait, what? Like, what do you mean you used to cover that team?" And I'm like, "Well, kind of. I mean, I was there, and I got sound bites, and I didn't ask a lot of questions. I don't think I asked. I think I maybe asked 2 questions when I was sent out there.
Like, where's
But
the washroom and how do I get to the parking lot?
exactly. Like I was just keeping my mouth closed and letting the people who knew what they were doing do what they do. But it's so great to see like their reaction
Yeah.
to this. Like 19-year-olds, like going through some of this stuff, they have no idea. Like it's so great.
Dude, taking my boys through it has been so awesome. Because I record them and then we'll watch them when we have time during the day. For them, because they've been into basketball and they both love the NBA. I mean, they're crazy about it. I mean, they wake up in the morning, they check box scores, they see who scored what, standings. I mean, it's insane. They do it for whatever sport is on at the time. And the NBA they just both really love. And for them, for the last 2 years, LeBron James was the man. I mean, they got James T-shirts, they got Lakers hoodies. Jackie just got a Lakers hoodie last week for his birthday. Like LeBron was the man. And as a dad doing my duty, I got the iPad out and showed him highlights of Michael Jordan. I'm like, yeah, LeBron is cool. Like LeBron, like he's awesome. I love LeBron. But there's a guy named Michael Jordan, and here let's watch some of his highlights. Let's see some of his highlights. He played for the Bulls, and explained to him that. Pulled out some Bulls memorabilia I had from storage, and showed him like the championship team plaque, the team, and I'm like, this is Michael Jordan. So now we have this to watch and to show. And now, like, they get that Michael Jordan, like, LeBron's cool, and, like, LeBron's still their man, but Michael Jordan was the best. So it's been really cool. And watching the Last Dance, dude, it's been my favorite sports documentary I've ever watched. I smile for 2 hours straight where it hurts my cheeks. I cry and get teary-eyed at least half a dozen times every 2 hours. It happens. It got me going back to that 93-94 season after Michael had left. I was at Moody and doing radio there. My radio partner and I, we talked the program director at WMBI 90.1 to give us credentials for MBI so we could go to Hallis Hall and the Burnout Center and games under the guise of, we'll track down Christian athletes and get a soundbite from them that you guys could use. But we just wanted to go. And dude, so I found a bunch of memorabilia that I had like pictures. So we talked to the Bulls one day and told them all, we're 2 college students from WMBI. Could we get some inside access to the Burnout Center? And they gave us tours. They gave us a whole run of it one day. I got pictures with BJ and with Pax and with Scott Williams and Stacey King. Like those 4 dudes spent way more time with us than they needed to. Like they were so generous and kind with their time. Here's 2 idiot, college kids with another dude who's recording it with a camcorder, another guy with a camera. We're all over the Burnout Center and learning about it and the organization and talking to those 4 dudes in particular. It was crazy. And I remember being at one of the games and we're doing a gangbang after the game and we're all at Scotty's locker. And Scotty, he's sitting at the small chairs and where it's like his knees like above his head because they're so long. And he's got his suit on and his zipper's down and his underwear showing, right? And his suit pants. So everyone's asking him questions. And it's the only time I ever spoke at any of these things. I was deathly afraid to ask a question. So everyone kind of breaks up a little bit. And I lean in and I go, Scotty, your zipper's down. And he's like, oh, thanks, man. And just zipped up his zipper and that was it. And I walked away thinking I'd like just done the greatest work ever in radio.
You are Mahatma Gandhi. You helped out Scottie Pippen with his fly. So
then down the road, he's playing a pickup game at Moody at the Solheim Center, which was like the second best gym in the city at the time. And so he's there doing a pickup game, and there were some other Chicago guys there too. I can't remember who they were. But Scotty is the gym's closed off. It wasn't open, but I knew the athletic director at school well enough that he let me in. And I'm there watching his pickup game, full court pickup game, NBA players and other guys, college guys too. Scotty's wearing his NBA All-Star shorts where he was the MVP that season when they got screwed over by Hugh Hollins. And he's not wearing a shirt, which wasn't allowed at the gym at that time, but he was Scottie Pippen. And I remember he would dunk and I would scream and yell and I'm cheering. I'm just letting loose. I love Scotty. And I asked him if I could have his NBA All-Star shorts. I'm like, because he kept looking over at me because I was screaming and yelling. And he'd smile, and he'd look over, and so finally I was like, Scotty, come here. I'm like, dude, can I have your NBA All-Star shorts? Those are awesome. He's like, man, shut the fuck up, and he just took off running. I was like, oh, okay. I wanted to be like, dude, I'm the guy that told you to just pull your zipper up. Come on, you don't recognize me? It's me. I saved you all that embarrassment. And yeah, shut the fuck up. I'm like, okay, all right, that works too, my man. So, but dude, yeah, it was cool. So it's cool, like going back to that Last Dance and then having those experiences to look back on. Being in Hallis Hall, and I got a great picture of me asking Richard Dent a question. It was Packers week. They were going up to Green Bay to play, and it was Reggie White's first season with the Packers. And I remember asking Richard Dent, I'm like, do you get any extra motivation for this week? Not only is it Packers week, you're in Lambeau, but you're going to be compared to Reggie White, for this game. Does that give you? And I remember, man, the dude took time, made a thoughtful answer to it. I got a great picture of it. But going back to that time now, the Last Dance has kind of brought me there into those experiences of college radio. It was really cool to relive.
I always say that people have no idea your knowledge of the Bible.
Yeah, it didn't do me a whole lot of good, but yeah, no, I got more knowledge than I should.
But they would never know like how many verses from the Bible that you could recite.
Dude, there was times when some of the smaller books of the New Testament, I could recite most of it, like the whole book. And a lot of the Gospels. There's a lot of sections of the Gospels I could recite, but I don't remember much of anything anymore. I mean, I do, but it's not as sharp as I once was, for sure.
Well, it's all blended in now, where you're teaching lessons to the boys and like all this stuff that's in there now. But there's
I know. I know people won't believe it. I mean, I was drinking on the radio, so it's like, this guy doesn't know the Bible. I do, and my faith still plays an important part of my life, and my realization that there's greater things out there than ourselves, and it helps keeps things in perspective too. My boys, not now, but the youth program, the kids program at our church, the boys really enjoy going on Sundays, so it's pretty cool. And I was helping out for a little while with the high school and the junior high group at the church, but obviously nothing's happening right now. So.
Well, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for opening up and being a part of this on the pod, man. I was glad to get.
Yeah, no. Oh, I was looking forward to it. I was really glad you asked me, and I was just looking forward to getting some stuff out, and just out between us in particular, and just getting some stuff said that I know people will hear. So it's important to me that people know, that a lot of things that have happened in relationships and time at the score was really because of me and not because of anything else. And I'll cherish every minute I spent there. Absolutely.
Well, we miss you. So
good. Well, talk to Mitch. Get me back.
All right, I'm on it.
I'll produce your show with Herbie.
Oh, that would be fun. Then you could yell at me. Great.
No, I would do that. You know what I would love to do? Not really, but I always thought Bernstein should be solo. And I hate the way in which it happened now, obviously, but I really thought that after Terry retired, man, I had my own vision for the station at that point, but I totally wanted Dan to be solo. I think being solo will change a lot of the negative perspective of what people think of Dan. I thought that would have been a really valuable step. I had my own plans for the station after Terry retired.
Do you want to give your score lineup?
Yeah, I would have put Bernstein solo in the morning show. I think it would have totally changed the way he approached an audience, and I think the audience would have been able to appreciate Dan, who he is as a person. I thought it would have just been really tight and guest formatted, and it would have been informative and not allowed people to hate Dan as much, because you wouldn't have as many opportunities to tell them how wrong they were. My midday score was going to be you and Jason, and then we're going to put Mully and Hanley in the afternoons.
Man, it's not a terrible lineup.
No, I thought it would have been really, really good.
I'm really hoping that one day, it's weird because Jason and I now technically work together at NBC, and I'm trying to kind of slowly convince him that we should do a weekly podcast together. But he's been so generous, like coming on the radio show, that when he's on the show, man, it's so easy. Like the two of us, like as far as a partnership on the air, It's so easy. And thank you for thinking that we could do a show together. I appreciate it.
Oh no, dude, it would have been easy. That would have been a no-brainer. I'd have made that move. That Terry was done on the 5th of January, whatever that following Monday was. That's what I would have kicked off. Would have got it started.
That'd have been fun.
Yeah, I thought because Dan. I always thought Dan could do a national show, even though he never wanted to.
Me
and
too.
A lot of my anger towards Dan derived out of the fact that he didn't hold high enough expectations for himself. But then I had to realize that I can't run Dan's life, and if Dan is happy doing local radio in Chicago, then I should shut the fuck up and let Dan be happy. But I had higher expectations for Dan, is what he could do. And I thought you could have formatted a morning show, a solo morning show, to sound like a national show but be local at the same time.
Scores on the force.
That was 3.5. What were you doing?
What the?
Yeah, so that's my broken pinky.
Show you.
And that's what Murph saw.
And he thought it was 3.5.
And didn't do scores on the force. Yeah. So. And you wonder why I drank so much. And you wonder why we had the master plan that we had, which can never be spoken of.
Yeah.
Ever.
It's in Terry's book, though. I like that he left our names out, but it's in Terry's book. I laughed. Someone asked me, they were like, hey, are you in Terry's book? I'm like, yep, I'm in there. My name's not in there, but I'm in there.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
See, and that's what I meant, man. That person has evolved in a lot of ways. So
it's good.
I'm trying to, that's my thing. That's my anger is my vice. And I've been trying to evolve and become better and not allowing people to bait me into that level of anger. Because there very much is like a Hulk element to it of like, you really wouldn't like it if I got mad.
Right.
If I got angry, you would hate it. So why would you push me towards doing that? So I'm working through it. And honestly, episodes of the podcast have helped in that regard. Like,
good. And that's why you're the Hulk.
Yeah, right?
That's why I'm Tony Stark.
That's why you are Tony.
I'm not Iron Man. I'm Tony Stark.
Hey, Tony Stark had a great life.
Yeah, he did. Dude, I cried. I cried like a baby.
At the end of Endgame?
Oh, my God, yeah. I hated it. I mean, I loved it, but I hated it. You know, that's my favorite character, man.
All right, so we talked about this. We texted about this, I think. Did you catch that it was Harley at the funeral? The kid from Iron Man 3.
Oh, yeah. No. I text you and ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because whenever I have nerd questions, I text you. And I was like, who's that dude at the funeral? And you were like, oh, that was the kid from the one of the worst Marvel movies ever made.
The worst movie that
Jesus,
they made.
man. Oh, and I saw Joe O on Twitter the other day was like, I'm going to watch it, even though Lauren told me not to. I wanted to call him, be like, don't. Seriously, don't. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And Iron Man is my dude.
It's not good.
One of the worst Marvel movies. That's worse than any like DC movie, and all the DC movies blow.
I don't know if anything's worse than Green Lantern.
That's pretty bad.
It's so terrible.
It was on TV the other day.
Waste of Ryan Reynolds.
I know. He's a good dude.
He figured it out. Like Deadpool is the character that he should play, and he pretty much now just plays Deadpool, even if it's not a Deadpool movie. He's just kind of, which I guess means that Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. Right. Every movie that I see him in, it's kind of the same thing.
I love him. He's one of my favorite actors, and his social media game is so strong. Whether he's like picking on his wife or making fun of Hugh Jackman, I mean, is one of my favorite things. Going after Wolverine, it's hysterical. It's so funny.
He's a good man.
Yeah. All right, dude. I'll stop talking. Let you go.
Well, I mean, we could probably do another episode at some point. I'll put you on a list of people that get to come back.
And when we can do it, let's do it in person.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Me too.
I'd
like to come see the estate.
No, we don't have to do it at my house. Like I can get you. I could requisition a studio. But yeah, you could come to the house too. Do it in the living room. I got the cord. Right. I got the mic cords are long enough that we could sit wherever. Be great.
Let's do it.
All right, brother. Be well. Tell the boys I said hey.
I will. We still occasionally talk about our pizza night out.
Yeah, I like being around those kids. They got a lot of
Yeah,
energy.
it
They're
was fun.
smart, those smart boys, smart, beautiful boys. They got a lot
Yep.
of energy and a lot of things to say, which I enjoy.
I will tell them Uncle Lawrence says hello.
Fantastic. All right,
All
be
right,
good,
buddy.
my friend. Stay out of
Okay,
trouble.
will do. I'll talk to you.
You got it.
All right, buddy. Love you.
Love you too, man.
All right, buddy.